Hello and welcome. Welcome to the third episode of Scheherazade's Tales to the Harem. And today we're going to talk about Aphrodite or Venus, but I'm going to go with Aphrodite as the goddess of sexuality. So let me stop this for a moment. So, one of the things that we do in astrology is we say that that Venus is the goddess of love and sexuality and beauty, but we also talk about her being the goddess of relationships. But in reality, that's Juno or Hera, which is one of the asteroids we now work with, because Venus doesn't engage in long-term relationships. She's about wholeness. She's about finding what attracts us. And with this Venus retrograde in Gemini right now, on Wednesday, Venus is going to kiss the sun. It's going to conjunct with the sun and start a whole new cycle. And it's in Gemini. And it's really about what attracts us. Venus turns us on to what attracts us. She's the attraction force of the universe. That's why she's one of the creator goddesses. She attracts things. So yes, we get attracted to people. We go into relationship with them, but she is really much more the force of that attraction. And that's why her sexuality is so opened and free. So once again, we're going to start a few screen sharings, if you will. And we'll do some stories about Aphrodite, the goddess of sexuality. So one of the things about Aphrodite is that Aphrodite emerges, from the sea, radiant in her own female or feminine sexuality. And she doesn't need a lover, whether a man or a woman, to awaken or confirm that knowledge for her. She owns her own body, and she knows that she's a sexual being. And so she asks us to enjoy our body just as much as we enjoy anything, okay? It's about the joy of the body. She loves our differences, okay? And so she opens us to the other. That's why one of the stories I'm going to tell is about how she loves Ares, the god of war, because love and war seem to go together. One of the things that's so interesting is that, there's a grappling component, especially to Mars, the Roman Mars, where he grapples with things. There he is after the lovemaking with Venus. And in a way, that's what making love is, isn't that? When we connect on that most basic level, that battlefield of love, which in a way we learn something about surrender. And it can be more pleasurable and ecstatic than victory. So it's about learning to surrender to love and passion, and we get to know an otherness. So Aphrodite can cause the gods even to fall in love with mortals, bringing together different types of beings, the other, who give birth to divine sort of mixtures, heroes and beauties and magicians and gods and kings. And it's through her magic that love and life connect heaven and earth. And the instrument of this magic is a garment called Aphrodite's golden girdle. It's a band of fabric wound around her body at the second chakra, the energy center for our emotional life and creativity, through which love and desire can bewitch gods and mortals alike. So this is a story about, here we have Venus or Aphrodite and Adonis. This is one of the stories that's very much related to the Sumerian goddess of Inanna and Tamazi. One day, the wife of King Cinyras of Syria foolishly boasted that her daughter was more beautiful than Aphrodite. Aphrodite avenged this by making her fall in love with her father. And the daughter went to his bed one night when he was too drunk, and she conceived his son. And he was so upset that he took her and he raised her sword to kill her. But Aphrodite turned her into a myrrh tree. And when he cut through the tree, out of it tumbled the infant Adonis. Now, of course, Aphrodite repented of the mischief he'd made, and she took the child and concealed him in a chest. And she gave this to Persephone, the queen of the dead. And she told Persephone to put the chest away in a dark place. But of course, Persephone was curious, and so she opened the chest and found Adonis inside. And he was so beautiful and lovely that she lifted him out and brought him up in her own palace. When the news reached Aphrodite, she returned at once to claim him. But Persephone didn't want this because she already made Adonis her lover. So they appealed to Zeus, but he could do nothing about it, for he knew that Aphrodite also wanted Adonis as a lover. So the muse Calliope was made the judge, and she said for 1/3 of the year, Adonis would be with Persephone. For 1/3 of the year, he would be with Aphrodite, and 1/3 he could do whatever he wanted. But when it came to it, Adonis gave his time to Aphrodite, and they begrudged his time with Persephone. And Persephone, in anger, told Ares, the god of war, one of Aphrodite's lovers, about Adonis, and so he became jealous. And Ares disguised himself as a wild boar, and he rushed at Adonis while he was hunting, and he gouged him to death before Aphrodite's eyes. And out of his blood, Endymion sprang up. And so Adonis's soul went to Persephone's realm, but Aphrodite got Zeus to promise that Adonis would return to her each summer. And so he did. So this is a myth of the dying and rising god, the myth of Isis and Osiris, of Inanna and Tamazi. And, and I think it refers to those loves that last just a little bit of time, and then we have to let them go. And we have to get over the idea that, which is very prevalent in this whole idea of romantic love, which sprang up in the Middle Ages. And at first it was really kind of a good idea. The Eleanor of Aquitaine started the courts of love with her daughter, Marie de Champagne, and they wrote the stories about Guinevere and Lancelot and Arthur. But it was this whole idea of that there was only one person that we could love, and if we didn't get that person, we would die. So we have Tristan and Isolde, we have Romeo and Juliet, we have these ideas, and it's come to us out of patriarchy. At first, those tales were to help the knights look up to a lady and use her as sort of an anima figure, to be a better person, to get learn the gentler feminine arts, since they were all soldiers. But as time went on, it became this desperation. I have to have this one person or else I'll die. And that's that patriarchal idea that when you're in love, you possess each other. And that isn't Aphrodite at all. Aphrodite is totally not possessive. After she makes love, she goes and takes her bath and she becomes virginal again. And so we have the story of Aphrodite and Ares, okay? At the time, Aphrodite was married off to Hephaestus, or Vulcan, the god who made things. He was a creator god. He made things out of metal, and and the god of volcanoes and forges. And he was kind of ugly, and he was wounded. I think that if we read back in mythology, a lot of the smiths, because he was a smith god, someone who created things in metal, were wounded. Their feet were crushed so that they couldn't leave, so that they had to stay where they were. And so anyway, he was a creator god like that, and he was kind of ugly. He was not Aphrodite's first choice of a mate, perhaps. And so Aphrodite and Ares would meet in secret and make love. And Hephaestus learned about this, and he created a chain that was so fine you could barely see it. And when they were in the throes of love, he threw it over them and caught them in this chain, and then caused all the gods from Olympus to come so that they could laugh at them. But Hermes, who is who could be either or, male or female, and in the future, he and Aphrodite do have a child called a hermaphrodite, who's both. He said, oh, but I would give everything to be caught like that. After Aphrodite gets up, she doesn't get embarrassed. She goes and she takes her bath again, and she arises in her own virginity because she truly belongs to herself. She does not belong to a man. Okay. And so we see these pictures right here of courtesans. And from the time of the ancient goddess, in ancient times, Aphrodite's temples were in gardens and they had booths, and men could come and make love with her sacred priestesses. They often said that these were the priestesses who could take the war out of men. In a way, they knew the sacred sexual mysteries so that they could ground all of that angst. And in some ways, we don't have that for our soldiers anymore. And they come back and they're abusive to their wives because they don't know what to do. And in ancient times, they had these priestesses who knew how to channel that energy and heal them. And so in the Middle Ages, as this picture right here, and in the Renaissance times, there were courtesans, and they were free women. They were the only ones who could be educated, they were wealthy, and they were the few women in the world who didn't have to bow to a man. And there's a beautiful movie that I've recommended since the 90s called Dangerous Beauty. It's based on a true story about the courtesans in Venice in the 1600s. So, you know, one of the aspects of Aphrodite is this idea of free love, which came about in the 60s when we all threw off the chains of being good virginal girls. But unfortunately, we made love irresponsibly in many ways. And we kind of did it like men, you know, just who can we fuck? And, but Aphrodite's lovemaking is more sacred than that. It isn't about just having sex. It's about union. It's about the sacred marriage in many ways. So there's another story about Aphrodite. She even fell in love with a mortal, Anchises. And this is her story. Zeus wanted to humiliate Aphrodite because, you know, that's what these patriarchs wanted to do. You could see it in Homer, where they tried to humiliate her when they couldn't even pick who was the fairest of all. They had to get a young teenage boy to pick. And of course, he was going to pick love and beauty. He wasn't going to pick power and wisdom. He wanted love. And if the goddess had ruled back then, the men wouldn't have probably gone to war. But of course they did. Anyway, so Zeus, in trying to humiliate Aphrodite, he wanted to make her fall in love with a mortal. And it was handsome Anchises, king of the Dardanians. So one night the king was asleep on Mount Ida when Aphrodite visited him in the guise of a mortal princess, clad in a dazzling red robe. And she came to Ida with its many springs, mother of animals, because Aphrodite is mistress of animals as well. She went right up the mountain to the sheepfolds. Behind her moved gray wolves fawning on her, and bright-eyed lions, bears, and quick, insatiable panthers. And when she saw them, she felt joy in her heart, and she put longing in their breasts. And immediately they all went into the shade of the valley in twos to sleep with each other. And now when she came to him, the goddess filled his heart with such sweet longing, and love seized Anchises, and he spoke these words: "No one, no god, no mortal man will stop me right here and now from making love to you immediately. Even if the great archer Apollo himself should fire groaning arrows from his silver bow, why, I would even consent to disappear into the house of Hades after mounting your bed, lady, you who look so much like a goddess." Well, Aphrodite convinces Anchises that she's a mortal maiden, so he won't be so terrified at the thought of making love to a goddess. And afterwards, she reveals her divinity to him and tells him that she'll bear him a son, Aeneas, who's the great hero who later became the founder of Rome. So you see, this goddess is quite willing to bear mortal children as well as immortal children. And she also sets delight in the hearts of animals, okay? She's the mistress of animals. She takes joy in the animal pleasures of life. She also she also had a great advocate in the lesbian poet Sappho, who would write her poetry all the time. And this is one of her hymns to Aphrodite. O Queen, don't break me with suffering and sorrow, but come here now, if ever before in the past you heard my cries from afar, and mark them. And you asked, Blessed One, with a smile on your immortal face, what else? What ailed me this time? Why did I call you again? What did I most want for myself in my wild heart? And the goddess asked, Whom shall I persuade this time into the harness of your love? Sappho, who's wronging you? Come to me now, too. Set me loose from this agony. Fulfill everything my heart longs for. Be my comrade. You see, Aphrodite's love persuades. It's so irresistible. She has that girdle that's irresistible. You can see it there slung over her leg. But she has this wild, passionate side that is important. So the last thing I thought I would read to you, because it's so beautiful, is a little bit of the Song of Songs from the Bible, because this is one of the most beautiful love poems that you'll ever find. I'm not going to read the whole one, but here's some of it. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Oh, that he would kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant. I am very dark, but comely, O daughters of Jerusalem. When the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. My beloved is to me a bag of myrrh that lies between my breasts. Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. You have ravished my heart with a glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How sweet is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice. Your lips distill nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. Who is this that looks forth like the dawn, fair as the moon, bright as the sun, terrible as an army with banners? I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the fields. There I will give you my love. So there we have just a bit about Aphrodite as the goddess of sexuality. And it's about owning our own sexuality, owning our female body and our male body. I know that isn't a popular idea, but we were born in a certain way. That doesn't mean you can't love men if you're a man or can't love women if you're a woman, but it's about honoring the body, because Aphrodite is the goddess of the body. As you can see from all these pictures, every goddess, Aphrodite is always pictured either naked or else undressing. And every goddess and god in any pantheon you look at always has, their statues always show part of their gifts and talents. And it's so interesting that Aphrodite is only shown in the naked body. She is the goddess of word made flesh. She is the embodiment of spirit in the body. And if we women, especially, but also men, if we women could accept that we in our bodies embody spirit and become virginal as we take our baths and don't let anyone own us or possess us, which is very much a patriarchal way of being married, that I think that we can bring a lot of wisdom into the world. This is Aphrodite resting after making love. There's just something so beautiful about the human body, especially the female form. And so that's why so often in the past, men have projected their spirit, their soul into women. As a matter of fact, in the Middle Ages, the church said that women didn't have a soul, and that we caused all of this, all of this rampant desire in men, rather than asking men to maybe be in charge of their desire. So anyway, women and men, I hope you enjoyed this stories about a Venus or Aphrodite as the goddess of sexuality. It's an open, free sexuality. It doesn't, all it is, it's about not just pleasure, but it's about union, and it's about experiencing the joy and ecstasy that can come to us in our human form. It's the original gift that we were given, that there is joy and there is ecstasy in the body, and that we aren't here just to look to some afterlife in heaven, but we're here on earth to embody spirit and to bring that embodiment right down into the body. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed some of the stories. Next week, I think I might do this on Wednesday, since that's the day that Venus is going to kiss the sun, come together with the sun. Our next section will be on Aphrodite as the initiator of soul, because Aphrodite teaches us wholeness. She's both male and female, believe it or not. She was born from her father's phallus, and there's aspects of her that are very male. And so it's about self-ownership. And as women connect with our own masculine side, Aphrodite is the goddess that we can turn to. Just as men really connect on the most basic level with their feminine side, she is also your goddess. So anyway, until next time, I will see you. This is Kathy Pagano, and these are Scheherazade's Tales to the Harem.